President Trump is now considering getting rid of the income tax. Take a listen.
As I said in my speech last week, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens.
At first, I kind of thought this was a joke, but Congress is taking it seriously. The Fair Tax Act of 2025 was a bill proposed which would effectively abolish the IRS. And if you still don't believe me, let me read you one sentence from the bill's press release. The fair tax would also eliminate the need for the Internal Revenue Service. Now, you're probably wondering, if the government decides to cancel your income tax, how do they get money? Which might explain why Trump has also been working to create the ERS, the External Revenue Service, as a new entity to collect tariffs. That's why in this video, I want to talk about taxes. Not from a political perspective, but from a financial perspective, because as a licensed attorney who's not your attorney, who keeps a copy of the Federal Income Tax Code in his office, which is, by the way, a 2,000-page book with 8 or 10-point font, I can tell you that taxes are very confusing. And they might get even more confusing. And so I want to break this down by talking about three things. Number one, I want you to really understand how our tax system works today, that we can understand how tariffs flow into it. Number two, I want to talk about tariffs as a potential replacement for the income tax. What does that look like? Is it possible? And then number three, I want to talk about, well, what would the consequence of that be? Would it make the inflation problem worse or not? Which is why I want you to really stick with me till the end, because I think it'll really help you understand the entire big picture. This is a very rough drawing of how our tax system works. This is you. For my male followers, I drew a mustache, which in my native language Punjabi is a much. For my female followers, I drew a braid, which in my native language Punjabi is called a gut. You pay the government taxes. I'll explain how and why you pay the government taxes in just a second, but you pay the government taxes, and then when the government collects this tax revenue, they can go out and spend this tax money. Now, you might think that if the government collects $100 in taxes, that they can only spend $80 out of the 100, or maybe max $100 because that's all they have. But that's not true, because if the government wants to spend money that they don't have, which is what they've been doing, then what they do is they go out and borrow that money, which is why we're seeing a record high amount of national debt today, which means you pay taxes to the government goes out and spends all of your taxes and then some with the help of debt. Now you might be wondering, well, what are you paying taxes on exactly? Here's a rough list of 10 different buckets of taxes that you might be paying. Number one is your income taxes. You go to work to make money. Well, some of that money is going to go in the form of income taxes because you just got paid. The government wants their fair share. Number two is payroll taxes. Payroll taxes are on top of your income taxes, which is when you get a salary, you have to pay FICA taxes. This is Social Security and Medicare taxes, which is paid by you and your employer. If you're self-employed, you have to pay both ends of it, so you have to pay double the payroll taxes, but this is paid on top of your income taxes. Number three is capital gains taxes. If you go out and buy a stock and you sell it for profit, you have to pay taxes on that. That's called capital gains taxes. Number four are corporate taxes. If you run a C corporation, you run a big corporation and you make profits, the corporation has to pay taxes in addition to the people that are actually getting the money. Number five are property taxes. You buy a house, you got to pay taxes every year, which is called your property tax. Number six is called your estate tax, also known as your death tax, which is when you die. If you pass money down to your kids, you have to pay taxes on that. Now, not everybody's going to have to pay taxes. This is really just reserved for the wealthy. As of 2025, the limit is you have to pass down more than $13.99 million before you have to worry about this estate tax. But if you're passing down huge sums of wealth, you also have to worry about this estate or death tax. Number seven are sales taxes. You go to the store and buy things, you got to pay sales taxes. Number eight are sin taxes. These are taxes put on things like cigarettes. If the government doesn't like it, like lottery, well then they'll put a tax on it as a way for the government to make some more money as well. Number nine are tariffs, which we already know, and I'm going to go deeper into tariffs. And then number 10 are other. I just kind of lumped everything else here because there are other types of taxes as well. For example, toll taxes. For example, certain times you might see hotel taxes. So there are a lot of different types of taxes out there. And what President Trump is trying to propose, and what it seems like he's proposing, is saying, hey, let's take this category of tax right here, this income tax, which everybody who has a job has to worry about. Let's get rid of that, and let's replace that by increasing this tax right here, tariffs from goods from other countries. So now that we all have a foundation of how our tax system works, where the government is going to collect taxes from you, and then they're going to spend all that money, and then some with the help of debt, let's now talk about, could we actually feasibly use tariffs as a replacement for the income tax. Now, I do want to let you know that if you're an investor and you like to stay up to date on what's happening in things like the economy and things like the stock market and things like the housing market, the crypto market, and the global economy, my team at Briefs Media publishes an amazing free newsletter every day called Market Briefs, where we break down what's happening in the economy, in the financial markets, into a quick and witty and fun to read newsletter. You can read it in less than 5 minutes every morning, and it's completely free. We have hundreds of thousands of investors that are reading Market Briefs every morning. So if you'd like to join for free, I have the link for you to join down in the description below. In 2024, the IRS collected about $5.1 trillion in income taxes. And then out of the $5.1 trillion that they collected, the IRS then had to pay back a little bit over $500 billion in the form of tax refunds and credits. So let's just say, we'll call it that the government collected around $4.5 trillion in the form of income taxes. Now, I know I'm just a random guy on YouTube, but if I did some basic math, if you want to get rid of the income tax, I think that you'd have to collect an additional $4.5 trillion in the form of tariffs in order to negate that. So I did a little bit of digging, and according to the United States Customs and Border Protection website, here's what I found. There were about $3.35 trillion of goods imported into the United States in 2022, of which we generated around $111 billion in tariffs. Now, I know that was based off of 2022 numbers, but that's the best data that we have from the government agencies themselves. But if we take a look at the 2022 numbers, that means, in theory, the government would have to impose something like a 130% tariff on all imported goods into the United States in order to generate $4.5 trillion based off of the $3 trillion or so that was brought in or imported into the United States in 2022, which doesn't seem very feasible. Not to mention the fact that the goal of tariffs is to bring some manufacturing back to the United States, which might have you thinking, if we slap on big tariffs and some more manufacturing comes back into the United States, we might have even less imported goods because less goods are being made overseas. So if less goods are being made overseas, more goods are being made here, less goods are being imported, that means less tariffs are being collected. So based off of the 2022 numbers, to just rely on tariffs to offset the income tax seems very difficult unless, of course, the government cuts down their spending as well. Part of the reason why the government needs such high income taxes is because they spend a lot of money. Not only do they spend a lot of money, they're spending a whole lot more money than what they even have. So maybe the government could cut back their expenses drastically, and then they could generate less dollars from tariffs, eliminate the income tax, and then be okay because, well, we need less dollars. But you can start to see how that becomes a little bit difficult. But let's go a little bit deeper. Based off of the data that we have today, it seems very unlikely that tariffs would serve as a complete replacement for the income tax. Maybe you could use tariffs as a way to potentially reduce income taxes, but completely replacing income taxes, just based off of the numbers that we have today, doesn't seem very likely. But let's continue down this rabbit hole. If tariffs were to get passed, and we were to potentially reduce income taxes as a byproduct of these tariffs, what would be the consequence of that? Could we be looking at potentially higher inflation? Well, let's dig a little bit deeper. It's very easy to understand how tariffs could make the prices of things more expensive. I'll give you a quick example. Let's assume that I sell shoes, and I sell this very ugly shoe that I drew for $100 at retail price. Now, if I manufacture the shoe in China, I'm not paying $100 for the shoe. Let's just say I'm paying $50 to get the shoe manufactured in China, theoretical example. Now, if there is a brand new 20% tariff that's slapped onto goods from China, that means now my cost on this is not going to be $50, my cost is going to be $60. Now, I have a few options. I could eat up this profit margin and take that hit if I wanted to, or I could pass down this $20 cost, and now instead of selling it for $100, I could sell it to consumers for $120. This is one way that the prices of things can go up, and it's pretty obvious. So yes, could this raise the price to $120 or $110 or $105 to make up for this higher cost? Sure. But you also have some economists that say that tariffs will not make the prices of things more expensive. For example, the Economics Policy Institute in 2022 published a study saying that tariffs on steel did not cause the prices of steel to go up. Now, if you don't know the history of this, back in Trump's first term in 2018, he passed a 25% tariff on steel entering the United States. And the question ultimately is then what happened to the price of steel after those tariffs were imposed? Take a look. The steel tariffs were passed in March of 2018. 2018, which is where this line is right here. And what you can see is after the tariffs were passed, steel prices actually went up a little bit until September 2018. But then after that, steel prices actually fell, and they actually became cheaper than where they were before the tariffs until the pandemic hit, and then steel prices skyrocketed. This is why there's so much uncertainty as to what's going to happen with inflation if and when tariffs get passed, because number one, there's a chance that tariffs could make the prices of things go up because of this. There's a chance that tariffs could not make the prices of things go up because people eat up that cost. And we also don't know which countries would see the tariffs. We don't know what extent the tariffs would be. We don't know what retaliation we would see. And we also don't know how sweeping the tariffs would be into how many different goods, how many different industries. That's why it's so uncertain as to whether the inflation issue would get worse with tariffs, if it would stay the same, or if it could potentially get better. Not to mention the fact that this is where Trump has also kind of hinted that, hey, if we can pass some tariffs, well, then we can also pass some tax savings onto you. Which means, in theory, if you were to see lower income taxes, and then maybe you paid a little bit more money for your stuff at the grocery store, it could potentially still end up as a net positive, depending on how much you consume. Because if we see higher tariffs, well, that really then becomes more of a consumption tax. Because then this tariff ultimately gets passed down to how much things you buy. If you're not buying the things with tariffs, then the prices of those things may not go up and you may not feel that impact onto you. So this is where, again, uncertainty. We don't know what will see tariffs. We don't know which countries will see tariffs. We don't know to what extent tariffs will be, meaning how high the tariffs will be, and we don't know what countries will do in response to that. In addition to that, we also don't know what Trump is going to do with income taxes. We don't know if income taxes are going to get cut at all. We don't know if they're going to be potentially fully abolished, which really doesn't seem likely based off of the numbers that we have here. So that's why there's a lot of uncertainty. Yes, there could be worse inflation on certain items with the tariffs. There could also be a chance that inflation doesn't get worse on certain items. This is why I want you to be a financially savvy investor and not get caught up in the emotion, because I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care. I want you to understand money. I want you to understand how our economic system works. And I want you to understand how you can take better care of yourself and your family. That way, well, you can be a better provider. And in reality, at the end of the day, this is how our economic system works. There's a lot of emotional arguments, there's a lot of emotional things going on out there. That doesn't increase the value of your bank account, okay? You want to understand how money works. That way you can be a better investor. That way you can take better care of yourself and your family. And that starts with number one, not spending all of your money. That means you take the money that you earn from your job, you don't spend all of it, you save some money, and you put some money aside to invest. Now, if you have credit card debt, that's the first thing you got to worry about. You got to pay off the credit card debt first. If you don't have any emergency savings, you also got to take care of that. But after that, you got to stop spending all of your money so you have some money to save and invest. If you don't have any money to save and invest, you should not be worried about tariffs right now. The first thing you got to do is figure out how you can take care of your house. You got to figure out how you can have some money to save, have some money to invest, and not spend all of your money. Then, once you have money to invest, now you figure out how you can start investing. And you got to figure out the right strategy for you. Maybe you just invest your money into the S&P 500. Maybe you look for more advanced investments. You look for individual stocks. You look for rental properties. You look for businesses to buy. It doesn't really matter what you do, but the key is you got to put money aside to invest and then actually invest it. That way, in addition to you working to make money, your money's also working to make money, because at the end of the day, it is up to you to take care of your house, and the person in the White House is not going to take care of your house. That's why this is so important. You got to get your own financial education right, not get caught up in the emotions. But once you understand this, that's when you can start understanding what's happening in the economy. That way you can find more unique investment opportunities for you. Again, I'll be keeping you posted here on this channel, and also my team at Briefs Media publishes a free newsletter called Market Briefs every day, which will keep you posted on what's happening. And if you want more advanced investor research, we also have some more advanced products under our Briefs Pro products, where you can get access to more financial education and more investor research, if that is something that you're interested in as well. Our economy is going to change in 2025, and in this video, I want to show you how you can find the investment opportunities that most people are overlooking. Take a look. President-elect Trump is entering the White House in January, and he wants to make some sweeping changes to our government and economic policy. Let me show you why this matters. In 2024, the United States